Welcome to episode 214 of the XS Noize Podcast, where we focus on in-depth interviews with musicians, artists, and people involved in the music industry. I'm your host, Mark Millar. Thanks for listening. In this episode, I meet Finn Andrews from the Vales to discuss their 7th studio album, Asphodels. If you missed the previous episode, I spoke to Andy and Jez Williams of Doves to discuss their long-awaited new album, Constellations for the Lonely. So check it out, and if you like the podcast and would like to support it, help us out by subscribing for free on your favourite listening platform, give us a rating, and leave a comment. Finn Andrews, widely regarded as one of his generation's finest songwriters, has released 7 albums with the Vales. Their latest album, Asphodels, showcases his signature poetic lyricism, enriched by orchestration from Victoria Kelly. In this interview, Finn delves into the inspiration behind the album, his songwriting and recording process, his favourite songs by the Vales, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the XS Noize Podcast with Finn Andrews from the Vales. So hi Finn, welcome to the XS Noize Podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. I'd like to go back to the start. Can you share some of your earlier musical influences that shaped your sound, both in the past and today?
Yeah, I feel like it was my mother's record collection really growing up that had the biggest effect on me. It was mostly people like Nina Simone and Tom Waits and Dylan and those sorts of people, Patti Smith. They made me fall in love with music, I guess, in the beginning. I guess they've stayed sort of central pillars as I've gotten older. Yeah, I think those are still the people Leonard Cohen, those are kind of the people I judge everything against, unfortunately. It makes it a constant process of learning, I guess, with those as your teachers, your guides.
You've recently released the Vales' 7th album, Asphodels. Now, Asphodels is a deeply evocative title referencing Greek mythology and the underworld. So what drew you to this theme and how does it connect to the album's mood?
It was from my dad sent me this poem called A Disused Shed in County Wexford. I don't know if you've ever come across it. I'm not sure. He's an Irish poet. I'm not sure where in Ireland he's from, but it had a little introduction, a little quote at the beginning, and it mentioned the asphodel. And there's just something about that word which ended up as a bit of a springboard for the song, firstly, and then sort of out of that song came the other songs, and then out of those songs came the record. It's sort of a magical thing that happens sometimes. You do feel like, yeah, this one word kind of led the way for this whole thing, and it became very clear by the time the album was made. That was the title for it, and it's being as it is a sort of very narrative album and very much obsessed with death, really, and life as well. And it has a sort of cyclical feel, I think, the album, when you listen to it from start to finish. And yeah, I think I like the idea of like this flower that lives forever in the underworld. It lives forever in death. It tied the room together, I think.
And the album was recorded live to tape in just 5 days. So how did the urgency shape the sound and energy of the record?
I think, it was partly the speed we recorded it, and also I toured quite a lot last year just on my own, with sort of man in a hat with a piano sort of thing. And that was sort of that's how a lot of these songs got kind of bashed into shape. So it was kind of logical to carry on in that mode and record them all live and record them in the manner of all the records I grew up listening to, I suppose. I was sort of felt like that would probably suit me as well. So it doesn't allow you to overthink anything. And we had very limited tape, so we'd have to you'd record the song once, and if you wanted to record it again, you'd have to record over the first take. And I quite like the brutality of that. And I think it meant I made good decisions, and it also just sort of makes everything feel very unified, which was a nice thing. I think in the past with us, sometimes I've struggled when you spend a long time on these records. Yeah, it sort of becomes more of a struggle to make them all fit together. Whereas this was just very effortless because they were all recorded, in the same space, the same people in the same week. So it sort of solved a lot of problems, and it just made it immediately very intimate and very. We've sort of often had people after shows say, you sound so much better live than on the albums, which is always a very annoying thing to hear after spending so long and so much money making these things. So yeah, I kind of took that on, I guess, and sort of just wanted to make something that was very unadorned and just really was just us in a room.
Was it an enjoyable process? Do you think you would record that way again?
Yeah, very much so. I sort of regretted it by the time it was finished because I love recording so much. I'd made the part that I love over too quickly. So I'd think we'll definitely carry on. I mean, we sort of always recorded a little like that. Like there's always been a very live element to it, but I've never been quite so strict with the sort of, one vocal take from start to finish. And I just think I sing so much better when I know that I have to get it right the first time. Sort of just like when you play a show, really. You don't get to do it again, and you do things you wouldn't ordinarily do. And it sort of brings it brings something out of you. I think that discipline.
There's lots of great songs on the album. Were there any personal experiences or moments that were particularly challenging to translate into songs?
Like in the writing of them or the recording?
Yeah, the writing. Yeah.
I mean, I think I enjoy even the difficulty with writing them is sort of all part of the enjoyment for me. That's still the part of the whole process I treasure the most, and I sort of love having these songs, sort of like these stones in my pocket that are just being sort of gradually turned over and sort of whittled into shape. So even when things take a long time now, I kind of enjoy that process. I think there's a couple of songs on there that were a good sort of 3 or 4 years of intermittent writing, and other ones that were very quick. But the labor with that is very enjoyable for me. So I never see it as a detrimental thing.
How has your approach to songwriting evolved over the years?
Oh, yeah, that's a nice question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I think there's a part of it that's always the same and strangely very similar, where I remember running to songwriting as a teenager as this refuge from the world and as a way to just sort of process big, adolescent feelings that I just couldn't process any other way. And now I'm a middle-aged bloke. It's kind of the same thing. You're just like processing these other questions, and some similar ones, actually. I think there's just some things you never totally figure out. And but I think I'm I did used to get frustrated with myself, and I don't anymore. I just sort of see myself as shepherding these little ideas along, and they'll be ready when they're ready. And I've gotten more relaxed with that, I think, than I was as a younger man.
What usually comes first for you, the melody or the lyrics, and how do they shape each other?
I think it's, as I sort of described with the Asphodels title, it is often a word, actually. It's often a phrase seems to be the beginning, and then there will be some sort of melody or something on the piano, just some little like entry point into that world, I guess. Yeah, that tends to be the way it goes, but that changes a lot as well. I've just been writing with someone else recently, and he's been sending me these strange loops of sort of drums and just strange sounds. And so that's been interesting to sort of work not only from the music first, but someone else's music. It doesn't really change what I do. So I guess it can start anywhere really.
Can you say who that is, or is it a secret project?
It's LP again, who we did some of
Right.
Total Depravity with, and we've been sort of emailing each other little bits and pieces for the last few months. But he's kind of the first person I've ever done that with, really. I'm sort of never really been a co-writer, it's been really nice working with him, and sort of it's nice to do things in a different way.
So how important is it to you that listeners understand the true meaning of your lyrics, or do you prefer to interpret them in their own way?
Yeah, I do resist interpretation personally with things, just because I never found it added anything for me with the things that I love by other people. I hated English at school. I hated dissecting poetry. And I do find the less I know about the reason someone made something, the better.
Yeah.
Generally. There are some exceptions, I suppose, but I'm also happy to talk about it. I often feel like I have the most skewed version of what these songs are because of how long I've spent with them. Often what I have to say about them is a lot less interesting than what other people take from them. But sometimes I'm happy to talk about them. I just often wonder if I'm the person to ask.
And you worked with Victoria Kelly on string arrangements for the album. What was that collaboration like, and how did her arrangements influence the final sound?
Yeah, I mean, she's just been such an amazing collaborator. I was so lucky to find her. It's a real upside of living in New Zealand again for these last few years was being introduced to her, and we've worked on 3 albums now. And we've become very close friends, which I think always sort of intensifies the working relationship as well and makes it sort of richer. But I felt very grateful. Victoria wrote this incredible Requiem. She was writing it for about 25 years, and she had it performed a couple of years ago. And I was very inspired by that. And she was really involved very early on. As soon as I was writing these songs, I was sending them to her, and really wanted the strings to the sort of traditional thing in, sort of rock pop music is you record everything, and then on the last day you get all the classical musicians in, and they just sort of play over the top of everything, and you try and get them out of there as quickly as you can because you're paying them a fortune. And it was nice to do that a bit differently, and to sort of have the arranger like really involved and treat it like another member of the band. Really, she was like another member of the band, and we didn't have a keyboard player or anything. I was just playing piano. So there was there was very little guitars. So there was a lot of space to sort of fill with this other instrument, this other character. That was a lot of fun. We were sort of trying to think of who this person would be and what would they look like, and what would they be like. It was cool. I think it adds something, sort of having them as a part of the band rather than just a sort of afterthought.
The song Mortal Wound is a fantastic track. It was the first track I've heard off the album. And I heard, you can tell me if this is true, the piano was Nina Simone's piano.
Yeah, that was the rumor. It was Neil Finn. Neil Finn has a studio in Auckland, which is just so incredible. And he'd just bought the piano from the Royal Festival Hall in London and had it shipped over. And that arrived the day I was starting to record this. And it was sort of, the engineer had mentioned that anyway. This was like the same piano Nina played her Meltdown performance in London on and stuff. It's like, oh, that's a very nice piece of information that I'm glad I didn't know while I was recording. I think it would have stressed me out.
I think my favorite track on the album is Melancholy Moon. What can you tell me about the genesis of that song?
That was the last song written for the record. I think it was written, 2 days or something before we started recording. So that hadn't been through the same long process as a lot of the others. But that often seems to be the case as well. You sort of get this last little burst of an idea before you go in and record. And that was just, I think I wanted like another sort of tone to the record to sort of come in towards the end. And I think that song provided that nicely. And I love the string arrangement at the beginning. It really felt like something special there.
What song from Asphodels are you most proud of from a lyrical or compositional perspective?
I think, well, The Dream of Life has had the longest, maybe the longest, what do we call it? Like gestation period of anything I've written. I think I remember toying around with that maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And when I still lived in London, and I'd written it for this musical that I've been trying to write for a really long time. And that was going to be the first song in the musical. But it's just been gradually, evolving over these last 8 years and adding these little bits and expanding the lyric. And so, I was really, really relieved to have that one finished because it had been sitting around for a long time. And I felt proud of that one. Sometimes things when they've been sitting around that long kind of don't end up going anywhere. But that one, it felt like it just needed a lot. It needed a lot of time put into it.
Well, as we speak, you're currently on tour in Europe and you're going to be coming to the UK for a few dates in a few weeks. So how has Asphodels translated to a live audience?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a really great part of this. I think because the album came out literally the day before the tour started, which is a lot. We don't usually do it that close, but so those first shows, the crowd hadn't really heard the album, or at least hadn't sat with it for very long. So it felt like we were very much introducing those songs to the world. And it's such an essential part of the process. It does feel very seasonal, like you sort of plant the seeds and, and then you let them grow. And then this is the harvest really. And you kind of have to have this part of it to make sense of the songs as well. Like they just so dramatically change once there's an audience in front of you. And it's actually the quietest song on the record, Asphodels, which is just so fragile and on the edge of collapsing in on itself. That one's really just taken on a new feeling in the live set. We've put it right in the middle of the set, and it's kind of surrounded by a lot of really bombastic older songs. But it sort of became the focal point of the set, and it just felt a lot heavier, even though it's so gentle. There's like the sort of barren quality to it is even more, I guess, dramatic in the set because it's surrounded by all of these other screamy, howly songs. But that made me playing that in front of a crowd. It really changed the way I saw that song.
And are you looking forward to coming back to the UK for the shows?
I am. Yeah. I mean, I wish we were doing a few more, and I wish we were coming over to Ireland, and but it'll be nice to play in London, especially obviously having lived there for the last 20 years, and it always feels like our second home. It'll be exciting and nice to end there as well.
The Veils have released 6 studio albums prior to Asphodels, so I'm going to mention a couple, and I just want you to tell me what briefly comes into your head when I mention each one.
Okay.
So we'll start with your first album, The Runaway Found.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like my teenage diary, really. It's very hard to listen to some of it, but then some of it, I feel proud of it now. It's a nice little reminder of my younger self, but it can be a painful thing to be confronted with sometimes as well. There's a couple of songs though, like the Tide That Left and Never Came Back, which I do a very stripped back version of now on piano. But that song means a lot to me and really sums up that sort of period for me. Yeah.
Time Stays We Go.
Yeah. I might need more distance from that album to that one. That was like a record I think we shouldn't have made, and that was sort of in between 2 albums. I kind of wish we'd just put Sun Gangs and Time Stays We Go. I wish we'd combined them into one thing. There's a few songs on there, I think. I don't know if they needed to exist in the world completely, but I don't know. Again, it's kind of arbitrary what I think of them. But yeah, that was an album that felt like half an album to me, not a whole one.
And the last one, and out of the void came dove.
Yeah, I I love moments on that one. I think like this Asphodels is very much like every album's sort of a bit of an antidote to the one before, or sort of or refinement maybe is a nicer way of putting it. I kind of felt like that took too long and there were too many songs on it. So I wanted to do something more concise. And yeah, that was part of the reason for this as well. Just like boil it all down to its to the essence of these songs and the essence of what we do. Um, yeah, but I love moments on it, and it reminds me of a very tumultuous time, and it reminds me of the birth of my daughter as well, which is sort of how the album ends. So yeah, it's a nice memento from that time.
If people want to understand the music of the Veils, what are the 5 songs they should listen to?
Oh dear. I would say not yet, and um, not yet. Jesus for the jugular, and in the nightfall, and the dream of life, and oh fortune teller. I think that's a nice spread.
Yeah. Good choices.
Thanks.
You appeared in the 3rd season of Twin Peaks. So what was that experience like? And how did you feel when you heard recently of David Lynch's passing?
Yeah, it was such a huge loss. I think I just felt so grateful to have been invited into that world. There were sort of 2 occasions really, because we recorded in the nightfall in David's house, and that was sort of the first experience with him. And uh, yeah, he was just such a generous, funny guy, and created these worlds that were so inspiring to me from such a young age. Yeah, it was just so ludicrous that we got to sort of walk through the TV and be in that world. It was Soph and I, our old bass player. That was sort of the first thing we did was rent out all of the Twin Peaks first 2 series on VHS when we were 14, and watched all of those as sort of a foundational kind of activity in our friendship. And so yeah, it just felt just a really beautiful little miracle that was to get to be directed by him and to be in that world. All the sort of cast members were there when we were filming it as well, and all the other sort of 9-inch nails were watching us, and Laura Dern and all these films. So it was great. It was just one of the best days. Yeah, I'm really grateful for it.
Believe it or not, I have never watched it, and I keep on meaning to. so I must get into it.
Yeah, it's a heavy watch, but I think there's nothing like it. No, nothing like it on TV. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely will check it out. Finn, I like to ask my guests the following questions. For us music fans, music is the soundtrack to our memories. What song or album, when you listen to it, brings back the best memories for you?
Oh, it's just this springs to mind because I saw it. Rough Trade were re-releasing it. There was this album that came out when I was about 12, and it's by a band called Sunhouse, and they had a record called Crazy on the Weekend. And I just listened to it today. I don't think I'd listened to it since I was maybe 14, but I remember loving that when I was really young, and it's what I used to listen to with all my friends back then. I was sort of first learning acoustic guitar, and yeah, it really there was a what's his name, Shane Meadows. He'd made this made this film called 24/7, and it had a lot of maybe Sunhouse did the whole soundtrack or something, but it's very English and very sort of I was sort of longing for England back then. I think I was sort of sick of New Zealand, and it just it made me want to get out into the world. And yeah. Anyway, that's what sprang to mind.
If you could go back and relive one musical moment from your career so far, what would it be?
I think it would be when we recorded Nux Vomica, we were 21, I think, and Nick Launay, who produced it, invited us over to Los Angeles. So he had this studio over there, and we'd never really been to America before. And we were just there, and we had like 3.5 months or something to make that album. It was just, and in the studio every day. And I don't think we realized how privileged we were to be able to do that. It was, and we had Launay sort of showing us around Los Angeles at night and just having these incredible voyages of discovery into the dark Los Angeles underbelly. It was such an incredible time. I wouldn't mind going back there to that moment, and maybe trying to enjoy myself a little more and get less anxious about everything about the record we were making. I could have had a way better time, I think.
So Finn, with Asphodels now out in the world, what's next for you in the Vales? Are there any creative directions you're eager to explore?
Yeah, I think I'm always sort of one record ahead, but just because things take so long to come out. So we finished this one at the end of 2023. So I've been writing for a year now, and I'm still working on this musical. I'm doing this stuff with Jamie. I like to, it's good for me to bounce between a few different ideas and not get too bogged down in the mire of my own mind too often. So it's good. That's what's ahead, I think. I'd love to I'm sort of thinking about like maybe making a trilogy as well. So this next record feels very much connected to Asphodels. So I'll explore that anyway. That was these songs seem to be sort of connected in a strange way.
Great. I look forward to hearing that.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. Thanks for the lovely questions.
Yeah, not a problem. Is there anything else you would like to mention before we wrap up?
No, man, that's great. I think we covered a lot there. That was great.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, hopefully the rest of the tour goes well and the English shows, and I wish you all the best with the album. Really, really enjoying it.
Thank you, mate. Hopefully see you in Belfast one day. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there.
Cheers. Thank you, mate.
All right, Finn, take it easy. Bye.
Yeah, bye.